Alright, this is part 2, the 7.3 vlog, John Adams Takes Office and the Political Parties. I do apologize if you hear my students in the background. They were supposed to not be talking, but I only do so much. So, come on. So, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is part 2, 7.3 vlog, John Adams Takes Office and Political Parties. So, we left off with the idea of political parties and the differences between the Democratic Republicans and the Federalists. And remember, the Federalists during this unit is completely different than the Federalists that we talked about during ratification. So just try to keep those straight in your mind as much as possible. So John Adams is president number 2. He's elected in 1797. He's the first presidential election. This is the first presidential election with political parties. You have John Adams, the Federalist, versus Thomas Jefferson, the Democratic Republican. And because of how the Constitution was written at this time period, the person with the most electoral votes would become president. The person with the second most electoral votes would become vice presidents. So you end up with problems like John Adams as president, who is a Federalist, with Thomas Jefferson as his vice president as a Dem rep. And when you really look at it, how interesting / confusing / entertaining it may be to actually have two different people in power with two different political parties. Imagine having a Republican president or a Democratic president, vice president, or vice versa. It'd be quite entertaining. And Adams becomes the first president to actually govern from Washington, D.C., and the first one to live in the White House. So John Adams has a lot of problems going on with France still, because when Washington left office, Britain and France are at war again. France keeps taking American ships to try to stop them from trading with Britain, and Britain is taking American ships to try to stop them from attacking and trading with France. So they're each not wanting us to trade, and we're just trying to stay neutral. We just want to stay out of all of it. So Adams sends over 3 delegates to France to negotiate. And when we got there, our delegates were ignored for weeks upon end. And as our oldest ally, that was a major issue because we saw that was a sign of disrespect that you didn't talk with us, even though we're like your BFF for our whole history. And so France decides finally, after making us sit there for a long time, to send over some secret agents named X, Y, and Z to discuss the treaty. Yes, that's actually what they were called. And the agents asked for a bribe of about $250,000 just to talk with him. That's like if you have friends and just to talk with them on the phone, they want you to order them pizza or something. It's not really appropriate. It's kind of rude. And so when our press heard about this, the United States started to say, no, not a sixpence, no. And because we were like, why should we give you even a sixth of a penny just to talk with you? We're not trying to get anything. We just want to have a conversation. And because this becomes such a major issue, this becomes known as the XYZ Affair. And this enraged the Americans, who ended up canceling treaties with France. And then John Adams begins to build our Army and Navy. In particular, he's known as the father of our Navy. His most famous quote from this time is, "We must build our wooden walls," aka our ships on the sea. So from there we get to the Alien and Sedition Acts. And this uses what we call the necessary and proper clause, which we talked about in the last vlog, the first part of 7.3. That idea that the legislative branch can extend the power or stretch out the power. So we also call this the elastic clause because it's like elastic waistbands that are stretchy. And it allows the Congress to make whatever laws they deem as necessary and proper to control the government. So for example, the FDA, the Federal Drug and Food Administration, the ones who find out what is in our food and to protect us from corporations or other people who will try to poison us and put improper things in our meal. And so what happens is this conflict with France makes the Federalists extremely popular. But the Democratic Republicans are going to fight back in Congress and use the press to their advantage. Just like what we talked about with the Federalists versus the Anti-Federalists with the ratification of the U.S. Constitution, this is the same deal, that if you could spread your ideas through the press, you are more likely to get more support than not. So John Adams is really kind of ticked off about this. He does not like this concept, this idea of the press attacking him. He was like, you know what, I'm the president. You keep your mouth shut and you listen to what I say. And if you don't like that, it is your fault. And he starts to attack the press and the immigrants for these issues. And he uses the Alien Sedition Acts to control these people. So these are focusing on immigrants and John Adams' enemies. There's a big hint right there. So Congress decides when they pass this law, these acts, they do a couple things. One, they increase the time to become a citizen from 5 to 14 years. It's almost triple the amount of time to become a U.S. citizen from becoming an immigrant. The president also gets the power to arrest aliens, with quotes, who are disloyal or order them out of the country. So these are like people who come and visit us, and then they criticize our government. And John Adams was like, I don't like that. They need to get the heck out. I don't agree with that. And yeah, John Adams does have a little bit of a finicky ego. He did really, more or less, if you didn't like him, he'd try to throw you in jail. What's kind of interesting is he actually ends up throwing a congressman in jail who runs for election and gets reelected because he did what we call sedition, which this outlaws saying or writing anything false or harmful about the government. So this does suppress our First Amendment rights of freedom of speech and freedom of the press. So already we have President number 2 trying to suppress and take away our rights. And this is going to really take off the Dem reps and actually give them a lot of firepower during the next election in 1800. So the Democratic Republicans start with this idea this theory known as states' rights, which is this concept that states have rights that the federal government cannot violate. So this is that concept of who has more power, the states or the national government. And this is still a concept we are still fighting with over in modern times. Still, who should have more power? Who should have more power over what? And so what happens during the midterm elections? So this is the time when Congress is elected in, but the president is not. Congress becomes controlled by the Dem reps, who ends up repealing and then letting expire parts of the Alien Sedition Acts, because they're like, this is not right. We should not throw people in jail for disagreeing with our government. And that is still a major issue today. Should people be able to criticize the U.S. government? Really interesting topic. So, in the convention of 1800, we end up, John Adams decides to make an agreement with France to stop all of their naval attacks. And if you remember, the Federalists really do not like France. They prefer Britain, while the Dem reps prefer France over Britain. So this angers his own political party. And when you take off your own political party and you're going to run for re-election, bad things are going to happen. And it's not going to be a good time for you. So, as always, at the end of this vlog, please make sure that you are reviewing this information. And now for your question that goes in the doobly-doo, wherever that may be at this time. What do you think? The Alien Sedition Acts, peace with France, outlawing sedition, or even the building of the Navy and the Army? Which one of those 3 or 4 items do you think would make it difficult for President Adams to win re-election in 1800? And as always, don't forget to be awesome.